What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got a top 10 of Genesis. Brought to us by our friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Doug. Doug's been a patron for a year and a half, and a few days ago, his wife, Cheryl, messaged me on Patreon and let me know that Doug passed away last month, and this was the last list he ever put together for me, and so she sent it to me. So this one is going to be a bittersweet one, but we are going to do this one. Great justice in memory of our friend Doug. I'll tell you before we jump into this, because I know I think there's like 2.5 different kinds of Genesis fans. There's the old school Peter Gabriel, loves the prog stuff. That's not me. I respect it. It's not me. There's the Gabriel leaves, Phil Collins takes over, and they do this transformation where it's still some prog, and then they I did the album Abacab for one of our other great patrons, Trucker Cab. That was a great album with Phil in there, but with a prog transformation where it's some prog, then no prog, and then into the era of real hits, right? Real pop / rock music. And that's where this top 10 is going to lay. So there's not going to be, I'm going to spoil for you, there's not going to be any Gabriel top 10 songs, any of that stuff. So if that's your flavor and you tuned into this to see where they're ranked, I totally get it. It's not my flavor, and it obviously wasn't Doug's flavor, but I get it. Totally respect it. But it's not going to be here. I'm just letting you know up front. Let's kind of dive into just a little bit of background on Genesis. They were an English rock band formed in 1967. Yeah, 67. Their longest existing and most commercially successful lineup was a trio, right? Keyboardist Tony Banks, bassist guitarist Mike Rutherford, Mike and the Mechanics for my mid-'80s people, and drummer singer Phil Collins. And in the 70s, it also included guitarist Steve Hackett and, of course, singer Peter Gabriel, who went on to great success. And he'll come up in this, he'll get a mention in this. And then Genesis were among the pioneers of progressive rock with the Hackett-Gabriel additions. Collins took over as lead singer as a 4-piece. The group released, because Hackett was still there for one album, A Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering, both 1976 with continued success. Collins left Genesis in 1996. I didn't know this, right? And Banks and Rutherford replaced him with singer Ray Wilson, who appeared on their final studio album, Calling All Stations, in 1997. The album didn't sell well. The critics didn't like it. And they said, you know what? It's probably time to call it a day. They did reunite, Banks, Rutherford, and Collins, for the Turn It On Again tour in 2007. And then just a few years ago, on the 2021, for the Last Domino tour, where Phil was in really bad shape, is back. With between 100 million and 150 million albums sold worldwide, Genesis are one of the world's best-selling musical artists. They have 15 studio, 6 live albums. They've won numerous awards. In 2010, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Cheryl also said that her and Doug attended a Genesis concert in 1992 and is one of their favorite concerts. I'm going to say this before we jump into it, because I know there's a lot of Phil Collins haters out there. It seems as time goes on, there's more and more Phil Collins haters. Look, man, you can love him, hate him, like him. It doesn't matter. I find it hard to believe this many people hated him back in the day, because in the 80s, there were very few people any bigger than Phil Collins. I know we'll say MJ, but if you take start of the decade to end of the decade, man, I'm telling you, between solo stuff and Genesis stuff and movie soundtracks and a few duets in there, I don't know if anybody was as successful as Phil Collins. He was right up there. And he is one of only 3 musical artists ever to sell 100 million albums with a group and 100 million albums solo. It's Phil Collins, Paul McCartney, and Michael Jackson. So before you come in with the Phil hate, just keep that in mind. All right, the music will not be in the video, but it will be at a Vimeo link below. So click on that and follow along. Let's jump in. The number 10 song, Jesus, He Knows Me, from the We Can't Dance album in 1991, their 14th studio album. The album's the 4th single. It's a satire of televangelism, released in a period when several televangelists, such as Jimmy Swaggart, Robert Tilton, and Jim Baker, were under investigation for promising financial success to their listeners, provided they sent money to them. Went to 10 in Canada, 20 in the UK, 23 in the US. Before the lyrics were added, the song's title was Do the New Thing, possibly referencing Tony Banks' opening keyboard notes, which are heard again in the bridge. According to the behind-the-scenes documentary Genesis No Admittance, the first lyric Phil wrote out of improvisation was the chorus line, Jesus, he knows me, and he knows I'm right. Following up that lyric logically took him to the idea of manic, fanatic Christians who believe they're in touch with the Almighty, which was best personified by televangelists, many of whom finance their lavish lifestyles by conning believers out of charitable donations. Banks commented that while he likes the song, it's a bit more cynical than Collins' usual style of songwriting. Of course, you got Banks on the keyboards, Phil on the drums and vocals, and Mike Rutherford on electric guitar and bass guitar. I know almost all the songs on here. I'm sure I know this song. It didn't sound that familiar, but I'm sure I do. But anything in the 80s, I definitely knew. And I will say also, I told you this from 1991. This is when music is really changing, and Genesis still fought to have some success here. I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks to Doug, and thanks to Cheryl. Okay, I didn't know that song. Because as music started to change in the early 90s, I kind of stepped away from rock music for a little while. But, as we started to step into grunge and stuff, I won't comment on all that. I mean, I liked some of it, but it was just too much. But the lyrics to this song, I could spend 20 minutes breaking down. Don't worry, I'm not going to. But they're so spot on about worshiping a person. And that's kind of what the culture of Christianity is in the United States. Get these rock star, no pun intended, pastors who everybody follows who thinks they know everything. They don't know anything. So, yeah, I mean, the lyrics are they're great. Great drumming. It's really well done. Number 9, we're going to stick with the We Can't Dance album from 1991. We got No Son of Mine. I do know this song. It's not autobiographical, because some people have asked that question of Phil. About a fictional story about a character who is either being abused or witnessing the abuse of his mother, according to Phil on a 1997 appearance on VH1 Storytellers, which was a great show. Lead single written by Phil, composed by him with the other two guys, Tony and Mike, reached number 6 in the UK, number 12 in the US. The band's first song not to enter the top 10 since 1984 is Taking It All Too Hard. It was also a top 10 hit in several European countries and was the number 1 track in Canada for 5 weeks. The song's lyrics tell the story of a boy who runs away from his abusive home and, after some reconsideration, attempts to return only to be rejected by his father. In interviews, Phil has said that the lyrics are deliberately vague as to whether the narrator or his mother is the victim of abuse. It has a distinctive sound heard during the intro and before the second verse, referred to by the band as elephantus. The sound was created by Tony Banks, recording Mike Rutherford's guitar with a sampler and then playing 3 notes on the bottom register of the keyboard, greatly lowering the pitch. So you got Tony on the keyboards, Mike on lead rhythm and bass guitars, Phil on drums, lead, and backing vocals. And one other thing I found, I've never seen this. We have 3,000 videos up. I've never seen this. I've never seen the Zimbabwe charts, but this song hit number 11 in Zimbabwe. Let's go. Genesis, a true global reach. No Son of Mine. I mean, I remember this song. I never really paid any attention to the lyrics. Yeah, I mean, it's a song I relate to 100%, man. Like, it's crazy because my dad was an abuser to both me and my mom. Like, he was physically abusive. He's a drunk. Still alive. And I left the house a couple days after I graduated from high school when I was 17 years old. And, I've been back several times, and it always ends up the same way, man. I mean, it didn't end up in a physical way. That would have turned the tables a little different way for him as I got older, obviously. When I hit about 15, that stopped. But it never turns out right. He's 80 years old, and I went to visit him in the hospital because he was there a couple months ago, and ended the way it always does. So things don't ever change, and that's kind of what happens. Is Phil goes back to the house, and the dad tells him, "You left, so you're no son of mine." But he knows to make it right, he's going to have to go back to that house again, and he doesn't want to do it. I mean, I think some of the songs about, this all happens behind closed doors, and no one realizes it. They all think, they're a good family or the guy's a good guy, but so good. And what a good vocal performance by Phil. I don't think people talk about it. It's really crazy. I mean, this guy's just behind the drum kit. And when Peter left the band, they tried to get, they auditioned several different lead singers. And Phil was just singing some of the songs in the studio just until they found a lead singer. And the other band members came to him and said, "You need to do this." And he's like, "No, I don't want to do this." I mean, it's a crazy story, man. It's a crazy story. So it's Just want to throw a little kudos there. Now we go to Throwing It All Away from the Invisible Touch album in 1986. Songs about the separation of loved ones. Phil describes to his girlfriend the situation of the couple, her will to get away from him, and asks her in the end how she will manage to live without him. It's the second single in the U.S., reaching number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was the last single released from the album in the UK, only reaching number 22. It's also a top 40 hit on the Irish singles chart. The working title was Zephyr and Zeppo. Mike Rutherford wrote the lyrics on this one. Just a fantastic love song, right? That still has this great beat and really catchy and very good vocal performance. I like the verse, we cannot live together, we cannot live apart. And that's a situation, I've known it from the start. And I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship like that. I have. I mean, a long time ago. I've been with my wife for almost 30 years. 30 years this month, actually, that we first got together. But I was in a relationship like that before where you feel like you had to be with that person. And you didn't feel good when you were away from them, but then you don't feel good when you're with them. And well done, man. Good choice for number 8. Number 7, song that could have been written about me. I Can't Dance from the We Can't Dance album in 1991. Second single. Lyrics were composed by Phil. Music was written collectively by the band. Number 7 in the US and the UK. Also received a Grammy Award nom for Best Pop Performance with vocals in 1993. In Europe, it reached number 1 in Belgium and the Netherlands, while peaking within the top 5 in Austria, Germany, and Portugal. I tell you that just to tell you, most artists, when you research them in their chart success, they might chart in a lot of different countries, but not high in a lot of different countries. Genesis, they had great success all the way across the board. The way this kind of came about, during one recording session, Mike Rutherford first created the main riff of the song he called Heavy A Flat, to which Phil suddenly improvised the basic concept for I Can't Dance. The riff was actually inspired by a Levi Strauss television commercial. In the studio, the song was actually created under the name Blue Jeans. They used the Clash song Should I Stay or Should I Go? I'm very old because I actually remember that commercial. Originally, the band did not think of it as anything more than a joke recording that would be discarded quickly because the song was too simple, too bluesy, and unlike Genesis' style. Tony Banks said in an interview, quote, "It was one of those bits you thought was going to go nowhere. It sounded fun, but wasn't really special. And it wasn't until Tony decided to add keyboard sound effects to complement Mike's playing that the song took on a different feeling. The band came to appreciate the sly humor inherent in the song and chose to not only record it properly, but to put it on the album as a single." Banks also said in an interview that the recording of the song that featured minimal production indicated a direction Genesis could have gone in to make themselves stand out better against the rising popularity of alternative rock. Quote, "Opposite to what Genesis has done is general practice, which is taking an idea and turning it into a long or complex composition." Go to the early to mid 70s for that. It was just taking an idea and leaving it alone. I Can't Dance, Phil bringing a little more power in the vocals, using a drum machine in there because, I mean, that's what we did in the 80s and early 90s. Even great drummers used drum machines in there too to give it a kind of unique sound, especially at the start. Really good guitar work. Number 6, we got Illegal Alien from the Genesis self-titled album in 1983, written by all 3 guys. Third single from this album. The song's lyrics were inspired by the band's troubles with getting visas to re-enter the United States while on tour, telling the satirical story of an illegal alien facing obstacles in the process of trying to move to the U.S. Its accompanying music video depicts the members of Genesis as a group of Mexican men unsuccessfully attempting to get their passports approved, and shows them in ponchos and sombreros, which, I mean, as you retrospectively read about this, and I mean, Genesis was so good in their videos because Phil never took himself seriously, right? Their videos are so well done. I'll get to one that's like extremely well done in a little while. But, you know, retrospectively, people really slam this song. But you got to remember, man, I mean, I'm not saying it's okay, but it was 1983. And this is just kind of what was done. It doesn't make it right, but this is what was done by everyone. And so when we go back and take something that's, 40 plus years old and go, man, these guys, it's insanity. And everything I read about this song, I've never heard it, says it's fantastic. 46 in the UK, 44 in the US. Okay, Phil even sings it in a little bit of a Spanish accent. Look, I could see how this is offensive, and I'm not saying it isn't. It's crazy catchy the longer it goes on. I could see why Doug picked it at number 6, especially because I'm sure Doug lived with this song since 1983 when it came out. No one thought anything of it. Or up to number 5, That's All from the same Genesis self-titled album in 1983. US single reached number 6 in early 1984, making it their first Billboard top 10 hit. The UK single went to 16. It was intended as an attempt to write a simple pop song with a melody in the style of the Beatles. Phil acknowledged in an interview that the song also features one of his attempts at a Ringo Starr drum part. Okay, we got some definite synthesizers on this. Tony Banks is playing 3 different synths on it, and I do definitely remember this song. That's all. Just really well done. 1984, I'm 12 or 13, depending on when the song comes out. I mean, this is where I'm just really humming. I really get into music. Like, I was into it most of my life, just the radio, right? I didn't have parents who were into music or any of that, but just listening to popular radio on repeat. But I get into, junior high, I get into, 7th grade, maybe even 6th grade, 5th grade. I really know everything. So that's, MTV's, then I'm a child of that. But I remember the video of the song. I can picture it right now. And, Phil's just talking in this song. He loves her and he wants to be with her, but he's always doing right. He always thinks he's doing, but a very good choice for number 5. Number 4, we got a song I don't think I know, but maybe I do. You never know till you hear it. But Turn It On Again from the Duke album, all the way back in 1980. So our oldest song, I'll give that away on this list. Went to number 8 in the UK, becoming their second top 10 hit there. Mike Rutherford wrote the lyrics concerning a man who does nothing more than watch television. He becomes obsessed with the people he watches on it, believing them to be his friends. I've known some people that way. Maybe as I get older, sometimes when I binge watch a TV series, I feel the same way. I don't know. It was built from leftovers from projects by each member. The musical bit used as a chorus was conceived by Tony Banks for a curious feeling. So we kind of put Rutherford's riff, the bit he used on Small Creep's Day, curiously enough, with the bit I used on A Curious Feeling. We put those two together. We made it much more rocky. Both bits became much more rocky. My bit was a bit more epic, and Mike's bit was a bit slower and a bit more heavy metal. And then Phil gave it a much more straightforward drum part. Perhaps neither of us would have thought that we would want that on that bit. We put on 1 or 2 other bits too that ended up from there. It went to 58 in the US, but you got to remember, these guys are master musicians, right? You listen to their 70s stuff, it's insane, man. So they were able to do these things easily, simply. And it's complicated stuff, but they were able to do it with no problem. Turn It On Again, a really good song. I've never heard that song. Very good. I mean, I went to 58 in the US, so it's kind of obvious why I've never heard this song, but well done. Great subject matter because, like I said, maybe I feel that way sometimes. And I know my mom kind of felt this way. She led a pretty isolated life. I kind of give you a little hint into my home life. And I think she really connected with the people on TV because she would tell me all about her shows all the time, even shows that I didn't watch, and with a fervor. And I kind of think that's what this guy is doing here. All right, we're up to number 3 in Doug's top 10 Genesis songs. From the Genesis self-titled album in 1983, we got Mama. Phil explained the song's lyrics in an interview. He said, our manager, when he first heard it, thought it was about abortion, the kind of feeling of the fetus, if you like, saying to the mother, please give me a chance. Can't you feel my heart? Don't take away my last chance. All those lyrics are in the song, but in fact, what it is just about a young teenager that's got a mother fixation with a prostitute that he's just happened to have met in passing. And he has such strong feeling for her and doesn't understand why she isn't interested in him. It's a bit like British actor David Niven in The Moon's a Balloon. I don't know if you've read that book. He's very young, just came out of cadet college or whatever, and he meets this quite, 45-year-old prostitute who he has a fantastic time with. He's special to her, but it definitely can't go any further than what it is, and that's really what the song is about, with sinister overtones. It was the lead single from this album. It's recognizable for its harsh drum machine introduction, composed by Mike Rutherford instead of Phil. That leads into minimalistic synth lines and a minor tonality, and finally Phil's reverb-laden voice. It remains the band's most successful single in the UK, peaking at number 4. Shocks me they never had a number 1 there, but it also made the top 10 in Switzerland, Austria, Norway, Ireland, and the Netherlands. It's less popular in the US, only reaching number 73 on the Billboard Hot 100. So I don't know if I know this song. I'm very curious about that when I saw that it was at number 3. I guess we're about to find out. All right, Mama, I'm not going to lie to you. That song is dense. It's more like 1978 Genesis than it is like 1986 Genesis, which this is 1983. It's kind of in between those two periods. It's hard to take it all in on first listen. it's a fantastic song that takes you on this journey, but it's the first one I've heard. And I knew a lot of these other songs where I'm like, yeah, there's a lot to this one. So a great choice for number 3. Just a fantastic song. All right, we got 2 songs left. We got Land of Confusion off that Invisible Touch album in 1986. The music was written by the band. The lyrics were written by Mike Rutherford. Third single, 14 in the UK, 4 in the US, reached a top 10 in Canada, Ireland, West Germany, and the Netherlands. That's why we know we're going way back, right? Because there's still West and East Germany. The song is widely remembered for its music video, which had the heavy airplay on MTV. The video saw caricature puppets by the British television show Spit and Image. After Phil saw a caricature version of himself on the show, he commissioned the show's creators, Peter Fluck and Roger Law, to create puppets of the entire band, as well as all the characters in the video. It's very political. The Reagan administration, which now retrospectively has been viewed as this by a certain segment of people here in the United States as this great 8-year run of the presidency, which if you live through it and examine it, not so much. Just leave it at that. But there's some really good, the video is fantastic. Considered one of the greatest videos of all time. So a good choice for number 2. So being somebody that watched hours of MTV every single day, you get caught up on the videos. And that was a great thing because sometimes the videos would be the story of the song, but sometimes they wouldn't. And while this video was great because of the stances it was taken, when I sit here and read the lyrics, I mean, this song is so well written. I mean, it starts out, I must have dreamed 1,000 dreams, been haunted by 1,000,000 screams, but I can hear the marching feet. They're moving into the street. Now, did you read the news today? They say the danger's gone away, but I can still see the fires alight. They're burning into the night. And that pre-chorus, there's too many men, too many people, making too many problems, and not much to love to go around. Can't you see this is a land of confusion? And then the chorus is so catchy. This is the world we live in. These are the hands we're given. Use them, and let's start trying to make it a place worth living in. So that was 1986. 2024, I would dare to say, is way worse. But very catchy chorus, as so many Genesis songs are, which made the last song, Mama, I didn't even mention it during the, even more unique because it didn't have a chorus at all. But, you know, this one, you could say, suffers from the sound of 1986. Drum machines and heavy synth. That's what everything sounded like, boys and girls. If you didn't live through it, you might not like it. If you did live through it, you might be sick of it. But there are songs where it's used and it's just absolutely unbelievable. And that's my segue into the number 1 song, which is just fantastic. Obviously from the same album. The title track, Invisible Touch. It's a group composition, featured lyrics written by Phil. Lead track, it was their first and only number 1 in the United States. It was the first of 5 consecutive U.S. top 5 singles from the album of the same name. So think about that again. First of 5 top 5 singles in a row. It also reached number 4 in Canada, 15 in the UK. Phil's called it his favorite Genesis song, and Mike Rutherford has called it a wonderful song. Upbeat, fun to play, always a strong moment in any gig. It came about during a jam session. Rutherford playing a guitar riff while Collins improvised the line, "She seems to have an invisible touch." Phil said he'd heard the influence of Prince and Sheila E. in the drum machine, and his lyrics were inspired by a few people he had known who had got under his skin. Despite liking the song itself, and despite the band's previous successes, he's claimed it wasn't a song he was certain would be a hit. He said that large chunks of the lyrics about his first wife, Andrea, to whom he was married from 1975 to 1980. A little interesting thing, that when this song was knocked out of number 1 in the U.S., an old friend, Peter Gabriel, knocked it out with the song Sledgehammer, whose video also beat out Land of Confusion in some of the awards races as well. So Peter is back. He's still there with Genesis. Invisible Touch. Look, I know the solo in there is very dated, the sound, right, the sense and everything. This song is great, man. I'm sorry I lived through it. I absolutely loved this song when it came out. Just played it on repeat on my cassette player. Reminded me of a girl who I was dated and was involved with at the time. I was 15 years old. This song still hits with me the second I hear it. I was not reading the lyrics when it was going. I know all the lyrics. It's crazy how music sticks in your head. This is 1986. I probably haven't heard this song since 1986 or 87-ish, right? But it's just fantastic. It would have been my choice for number 1 as well. So now we're going to get to my favorite tracks. Honorable mentions, Throwing It All Away, and That's All. My faves are going to be No Son of Mine. Obviously, I have a personal connection to that song. Mama, and yeah, I don't even have to tell you, Invisible Touch. But we need to know what you think. What are your favorite Genesis tracks from any era? But I mean, this is obviously the Phil Collins led era, and by far my favorite era of Genesis. Thanks to Doug for bringing this one. Thanks to Cheryl for passing along this list of his is to me, and it's weird, man, because Doug has brought me a lot of great stuff over the last year and a half. Some stuff made me a fan of some people that I wasn't a fan of. Let me relive a lot of my formative years with this. We did Kenny Rogers last month. We did Pat Benatar, Loverboy. We did these groups that brought me right back, man. Lionel Richie a while back. Like, yeah. So this one's pretty bittersweet, but in memory of Doug, man. May he rest in peace, and thank you guys for watching.